Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by fellow lifetime Longhorn, the young prodigy CJ Vogel, here for your Wednesday night live stream. Thank you guys for joining us. You know how this works. We'll try to address and we'll try to answer as many questions and concerns and requests as you guys have. So just throw those out there. Super chats jump to the front of the line. They can interrupt the show at any time. We'll get into the injury report, the availability report that came out probably just a few minutes ago. So we'll get to that. That's breaking news. Of course, looking ahead to Texas versus Florida. We'll continue to preview that matchup. If you guys want to, we can dive into that. Sark spoke to the media again earlier today, so we can get into what Sark said and some of Sark's comments as well. College football playoff rankings still top of mind. Longhorns number 5 in the latest, the first, I should say, college football playoff rankings. So we'll get into that a little bit if you guys want to talk about it. And, of course, any other news, notes, and nuggets that have to do with Texas football, we'll dive into those. But, of course, most of this show is dedicated to you guys, so we appreciate all of you guys for joining us here on the show today. All right, CJ, first of all, I mean, we'll get into, like I said, the availability injury report here in just a second. But, man, I got to say, there seems to be a lack of buzz, I feel like, about this Texas-Florida game. I feel like there should be more buzz, but it's not. And I feel like it's because, well, I don't know what the line is now. You probably keep up with it. I know it started out at like around 21 points, somewhere around there. Have you seen anything that poses a threat from the Florida side, in your opinion? Anything at all? Offensively, defensively, special teams, any phase that you're like, no, guys, y'all need to be aware of this. This could actually be problematic for Texas. Have you seen anything in that regard?
Yeah, of course, that all kind of depends on whether or not DJ Lagway will go. And, you know, that I think that's why you see the line the way that it is right now. Of course, a 3-touchdown favorite for a game like this between two programs who you would expect to be competing at a very high level, it stands out to you. But, you know, Florida does have good football players, and I don't think Texas should take that lightly. You know, Sarkisian's been saying that the entire weekend, and I think that's kind of the message in practice as well is, listen, Florida's what? 4-5. You know, they're not in a great spot, 4-4. They've kind of been beat down. This next month is going to be a gauntlet for them. Everybody's talked about that since the schedule was released, last year. But they have talented football players. They have guys that would play for Texas. They've got size. They've got speed. They've got strength. What you want to see is Texas come out and start quickly. Don't play with your food. Don't let it linger around like the way that Georgia did this past weekend in Jacksonville in this game. So that's where I want to see Texas come out. And again, it might not be one side of the ball specifically, Rod, but it's the individual play that I think Texas could really slip up and falter on if they're not careful.
Yeah, no, it's a good point about the DJ Lagway. Matter of fact, let's just get right to it and get to the availability report, because you're right. We thought it was more gamesmanship when Billy Napier said he would not they said they're not going to rule out DJ Lagway for the Texas game. And turns out the report is that he did practice today. And that comes from the Florida side. Billy Napier is bringing that he practiced. I don't know if he was limited in practice or if he actually was a full go at practice, but he did practice, which means he is now questionable. And you see that a lot of guys are out there. We talked about this yesterday because Eugene Wilson, the explosive wide receiver for them, was also ruled out because of season-ending surgery. So they got a ton of guys, as you can see right there, that are just out for the season. But the questionable guys, these are the ones you got to keep up with because they can be downgraded or upgraded tomorrow based on the latest availability report. Montrell Johnson Jr., he is arguably their best running back, CJ. He was the marquee running back for Florida starting the season. And I would argue, I don't know if Texas has played a team if Montrell Johnson is indeed available. And he didn't play versus Georgia. And he's been dealing with an injury for the last couple of weeks. If he plays, CJ, I'm not so sure that this isn't the deepest running back room, actually, that Texas has faced so far, potentially.
Yeah, Traylon Webb not playing kind of hurts that case. Okay. But Montrell Johnson certainly is a stud, right? He was a second-team All-SEC preseason honoree. So you see why, you know, that room is as talented as it is, right? Johnson, again, was one of the big reasons why Trevor Etienne jumped out of the Florida Gators.
Exactly.
You know, that's another conversation, but he's at Georgia for a reason right now. So to get him back in the backfield, especially with some of those questions at quarterback. Will DJ Lagway play? I think that's a fair question. He's listed as questionable. He practiced today per Billy Napier, so we'll talk about that in a minute, Rod. But what you need in this Florida game right now for Florida is a run game. You got to take the responsibilities and some of that stress off of your quarterback. And if Johnson can go, and if he can go at a high level, that means Florida will have a chance offensively. Because we've seen teams run the football successfully against Texas. And that's probably been the most consistent way to move the football against Texas. It hasn't been a huge weak point for this Texas defense. Of course, I don't think there really is a huge weak point for this Texas defense.
No.
But if there's been one way that we've seen teams consistently pick up 4 to 5 yards, move the chains, whatever you may want to say about it, it's been through the run game. And Johnson provides a lot of ability out of that Florida backfield if he's able to go 100%. A few more names I wanted to go down this list right now in the out section for Florida. We'll start with Jason Marshall Jr. up at the top. That's Florida's number 1 cornerback. And so now you'll see Cormani McClain. For folks that remember that name, he was a 5-star, top 1 or 2 cornerback in the country a few years ago. Ended up at Colorado, didn't work out too well, hit the portal, ends up at Florida. That's a guy who had to earn his keep, right? It wasn't a pretty departure from Colorado. Florida really made him earn his spot on the roster. I believe he was actually one of those walk-ons at the beginning and then earned a scholarship later on. So he's going to be a big-time player for Florida this weekend against the Longhorns. And then the other one I wanted to mention, obviously, Graham Mertz is out. Trayon Webb is out. Asa Turner, really talented defensive back there as well. A lot of guys dinged up in that Florida back room. Khalil Jackson as well. Devin Moore, another defensive back that got dinged up, as is Jakeem Jackson. So 4 defensive backs listed out already, and another one, Dijon Johnson, down in the questionable status for the Gators. Wow. Listen, Texas will have the opportunity to get back to where they want to be throwing the football with Quinn Ewers, and that's going to be against Florida with all these guys banged up, in Arkansas the next week on the road. I know that's going to be a tough place to play. Well, we just watched Jackson Dart and Ole Miss walk in there and throw for 506 scores. So that secondary, not good. Florida secondary is very banged up. If you want to see that offense return to any sort of rhythm that we saw at the beginning of the year with Quinn Ewers, next 2 weeks are going to be really important.
That's a good point about those DBs, man. That's a lot of DBs that are going to be out and questionable for this game for Florida. Getting back to it, good stuff there, CJ. Getting back to the guys who are questionable, elite, and we'll talk about DJ Lagway. Kind of give him his own segment here in a second. But DJ Lagway is questionable. Really surprised that he ended up, practicing with the team. Elijah Badger. We talked about him earlier this week, CJ. He's a guy that really can flip the script for Florida offensively. Just an explosive veteran wide receiver. He's a senior, been around a while, transfer, I believe, for Arizona State, if I'm not mistaken. This is a guy that I think averaging right now 23 yards per reception.
Yeah.
He's a guy that can stretch the field for you. If this is a team that's going to be over-reliant on a running game, depending on, hey, Rogue Shop in the house. Hey, what's up, Rogue Shop?
What's going on, Rogue Shop?
Love that. RogueShop.com. Go check it out. But if they're going to be overly reliant on the run game, they're going to wait till Texas gets impatient, start stacking that box, and then take their shots over the top. Elijah Badger was going to be that guy. If he's unavailable, that also changes the entire complexion, or at least the dynamic of the game plan for Florida offensively.
Yeah, that's a good point. Badger's a guy that's had to take over for the absence of Eugene Wilson, who's out for the year. Yeah. That was announced earlier this week. Badger, again, he has receptions of 40, 60, and 77. That's kind of what he does. He's a big play waiting to happen. This is going back to my point earlier about Florida being a team that you can't overlook because they do have individual talent. If he's unable to go, it's going to be Aiden Mizell, who kind of lit up Georgia a week ago. He was the number 1 target for the Gators, found the end zone, had another big play where he's pushed out at like the 3 or the 4. That's who they're going to rely on right now. Now, will they have the 3, the 4, the 5 guys at the wide receiver spot to threaten the Texas secondary across the field? Will they have a quarterback that can get them the rock? That's another discussion. But the individual playmaking talent will be there for a team like Florida with the talent that they have out of the state of Florida itself. So that goes to that point. But to your point, Rod, the former Arizona State Sun Devil listed as questionable right now. If he's unable to go, that's a big blow for Florida this weekend.
That's a huge one there. And the other guys on the questionable status right here on the availability report: Dijon Johnson, the DB. CJ mentioned him earlier. Damian George Jr., an offensive lineman, and Cam Jackson on the defensive line. So let's talk about DJ Lagway for a second here. DJ Lagway, when I actually watched that game and watched that situation, the instance where he went down, and it looked like it was going to be a kind of a catastrophic injury. He was carted off the field. The entire team came out to support him, and so it looked like it was going to be one of those worst case situations where he was going to be a season-ending injury. This is great news for them. Not only not season-ending after he was carted off the field, but he practiced today. So I thought it was more gamesmanship by Billy Napier, just trying to force the opposing team to do their due diligence, have to prepare for him. Not the case at all. It's a possibility that he could actually play. What are your thoughts about the DJ Lagway? Miraculous recovery, or maybe just never was as bad as everybody thought initially?
He must have hamstrings of gold, Rod. I don't know what the deal is, but my goodness, if I ever saw a guy get carted off, whole team comes out to greet him, towel overhead, nothing looks good. I mean, I would have thought he was done for the year. I don't know if I've ever seen something like that happen where exactly that situation and scenario occurs, and you're sitting here saying, oh, yeah, he's questionable for next week. That's kind of nuts, but we'll see. Again, it might just be gamesmanship, of course, but for him to be on the practice field, according to Florida reports and stuff like that, then there actually might be a chance that Texas sees him. And if there is a chance, I think it's safe to assume it won't be at full strength. With the way that he plays football, with his cutting ability, his change of direction, and the size that he plays with, you can't do that on one hamstring, Rod. That would hamper you pretty significantly.
Yeah, maybe they just want the arm. I mean, he's got a cannon.
If that's the case, that's fine. Just know that pressure is going to get there because the Florida offensive line, as we talked about, still banged up.
I agree, but isn't it still going to get there with Aiden Warner? You're still going to get there with him, right? And he can't stretch the football downfield. If he can hand the football off like Aiden Warner can, and your running game can still be a downhill running game, maybe they decide, listen, man, we don't need your legs. We would love to have that. We don't have that luxury. We just need you to be able to throw it further downfield than 12 yards because we're not sure Aiden Warner can do that.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I don't know.
As a defensive back, knowing that you might be playing a DB or a quarterback that's not a threat to run anymore. You kind of take away that aspect. Does that make you want to jump earlier on routes? He can't extend plays. What does that mean for you as a defensive back there?
I think even you watched the Dallas Cowboys, right? And you watched obviously the news is Dak Prescott had a really severe hamstring injury. But even when he was throwing the football, he didn't feel it as much on the scramble where he said he initially hurt it. He said where he felt it the most was when he ended up cringing trying to make a throw because of throwing, the mechanics of it. It is physiologically you have to use your entire body, the base, legs, all that. So I just wonder in terms of hamstring injury how severe it is, and does it affect his throwing ability? Like if it affects his ability to get the football downfield, maybe throw it on a line, or he's coming up short on some of those deep throws, as a DB, man, you adjust your technique accordingly if he's limited in that respect. So I'm with you. Like I said, I don't know if he's practicing, I'm assuming that he can at least operate the offense at a competent, capable level. I think you'll see both. Now, if he can play at all, you're probably going to see both. I don't know how.
Right.
He is practicing. He must be. I've heard he's a freak physically. So
yeah. I mean, he was Gatorade National Player of the Year for a reason, right? And I really do like this comment from Todd Lacey because I think you play it straight up. If you're the Texas defense at first, you're the secondary, you play it straight up. But the minute you start moving to a hash, and you know that his body can't drive to deliver that football across the field, you're cheating, you're jumping, you're doing everything you can to get in between the football and your wide receiver. And I think that's a big part of it because that hamstring, I mean, listen, the minute that ball starts floating because you can't drive it, that's an issue against a Texas secondary that's very opportunistic as we've seen this year.
I mean, literally, we could be talking about the best defense in the country, depending on what stats you want to look at. But that's what he'll be going up against. You don't want to be limited in that situation. Cisco says if that's the case, do you let them take the ball first so you can see who they tried out there? That's not a bad strategy at all, Cisco. Considering your defense they're up to the task. It's the best defense in the country. They're up to the task. That's not a bad idea. See who they tried out there. And Texas, I'm sure, will have multiple game plans ready. We'll talk about Aiden Warner here in just a second, a little bit too. But that is the big news today is that, yeah, indeed, DJ Lagway did practice for the Florida Gators. Is it gamesmanship, or are we talking about, actually him making an impact on the matchup coming up Saturday? Let's get to the Texas side, and then we'll thank our sponsor, our first sponsor of the evening, the Texas injury report. Matthew, if you don't mind putting that up there for us. That side of things is a little bit more optimistic than it did against Vanderbilt. Of course, the usual guys who have been out all season: Derek Williams Jr., CJ Baxter, Christian Clark out. The Velton Gardner thing, for those who CJ, there was an update on the Velton Gardner because he was out. He's been out for a while, but there's an update on the Velton Gardner situation now.
Yeah. He's been listed as out for a few weeks now. No real explanation as to why until today. Steve Sarkisian, during the SEC teleconference meeting, announced that Velton Gardner would be out for the remainder of the year. He has an eye injury, which is not something you hear about all too often in the game of football, but sources have indicated to me it was a bit of a freak injury deal that happened about a month and a half ago. So that's why you've not seen the grad transfer late addition running back on the field for the Longhorns this year. Of course, he's done for the year, so you won't see him on the field again this year. Again, freak injury deal, another kind of notch in the belt for the string of bad luck for Texas running backs this year. Crazy. He's now the third Longhorn running back to be out for the year, of course, joining Christian Clark and CJ Baxter. And that means Texas, again, they got who they got now. So Jaden Blue, Jarrett Gibson, Trey Wisner, Ryan Niblett, that's kind of who you're going to be rocking with for the remainder of the year. We'll see what goes on, but no Velton Gardner. I don't think it would have changed a whole lot for this running attack, to be honest. Yeah. But certainly unfortunate that he won't be able to go for the remainder of this season.
Yep. That is unfortunate. And just give me some clarity because it has been a few weeks and we never really got any reason for him being out. Thank you for that, CJ. Vernon Broughton, remember from him, the targeting penalty from the Vanderbilt game. He's going to be out for the first half of this game, which is important, guys, because if Florida decides they want to be an overly reliant on the run game and they want to pound the rock against Texas, that's one of your best interior defensive linemen. That means you're going to need one of those young guys to step up. CJ Sark talked about that this week. He actually mentioned a few of the young guys. Sadir Mitchell even got a shout out, which was surprising. Sadir Mitchell got some love. Who do you expect to see in the first half that we haven't seen early on in the D tackle rotation because of Vernon Broughton's absence? Or is it going to be business as usual because of the guys they brought in have been so dependable?
Yeah, I mean, I think originally you're going to see Jermaine Lole and Alfred Collins be the 1-2, right? They've been probably in that top three rotation. If you add Jermaine Lole to what Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins have done this year, those are your top three interior guys. Next up is going to be who? And I think that's going to be a fair question. I would like to lean Aaron Bryant just as like a 3 to 5 technique guy.
Yeah.
But you're going to need an over-the-ball option, especially against a Florida offensive line that has size, has beef, has guys that can displace defensive linemen. So maybe this is the week that you finally see Sadir Mitchell. He hasn't played since week 3. He's only played 20 snaps this season. So does that mean that it was lip service from Sarkisian, or does it actually mean that, hey, he could find a way into this rotation once again? Because remember, he didn't suit up for a couple games in the middle of this season. So for Texas, again, to have the depth that they have, it's now time to go get something out of those guys. And again, I keep pounding the drum for it, but Texas played 8 games this year. They might have to play 8 more games to get to where they want to go at the end of the year. And if they can get something out of guys who maybe they wrote off earlier in the year, that would be huge in terms of saving your big time, contributors or starters for the remaining of the season. But right now, I like it. Aaron Bryant, maybe Jeray Bledsoe, Alex January. They leaned on him a little bit earlier in the year as well. But that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. I'd love to see Sadir. I'd love to see him play well. It's just got to be one of those things where I see him on the field improve it before I put in any stock to what might be the case with him at Texas here.
Yep, good stuff there. Andrew McCouba, you can see him listed as questionable. I think he's on his way. I think he'll be upgraded next injury report. Colton Vosick, don't know what that's about. I don't know. Any news that you've heard about that, CJ? That comes out of nowhere.
No, a bit of a surprise there. I was unaware of anything with Vosick coming into the week.
And Sark has been very optimistic about Bond's progress coming off of his injury. Did not make the trip to Vanderbilt, but he's been practicing all week, and he starts off as probable here. Good chance, very good chance he'll be upgraded and probably be off of this availability or injury report by the end of the week. So there you go. Good news for the Longhorns. Always bad news for any injury report, but not a lot of surprises on here, and very few of your impact players on the injury report for the Longhorns. All right, before we continue, let me thank our good friends over Andy Ludicky and his team. We appreciate him sponsoring our Wednesday night live stream. If you're looking to diversify, you may be someone like me that has their hands in multiple businesses. Well, Andy can help you diversify by finding you businesses that will fit your time allotment and your financial goals. If you're stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you make or your schedule in general, call Andy and he will take you through a process to help you find a business that will fit your skill sets and your financial goals. Franchise ownership isn't just for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your financial destiny, just call Andy today, 404-973-9901, or you can email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. That's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Thank you very much to Andy and his team for sponsoring our team here on the Wednesday night live stream here on Texas Football. Shout out to JDH, and thank you for bringing this up, JD, and thank you very much for your kind contributions. Says prayers for Colt and the Monroe family. Longhorn Nation stands behind you. Appreciate all that On Texas Football does for us. Now it's time to show some appreciation back to one of our own. Oh, thank you very much, JD. That's very kind of you. And yes, thank you for bringing up Colt once again. We brought this up yesterday, but thoughts and prayers, folks out there. If you have the time, please take some time to pray for Blake and his family and Colt. Colt ended up going to the hospital yesterday after a kind of a freak injury at practice, and still there working through some things. I believe, there has been progress, but still he can use your prayers and your thoughts. So thank you very much for that, JD. And of course, our thoughts and prayers are with Colt and with the Monroe family and with Blake. So we appreciate that. We'll get you, and we'll try to keep you updated. I don't want to violate anything that Blake has shared with us. I know he is sharing things on his Twitter account and social media, updating folks there. So if you want an update, the latest that he's willing to share, go check out his social media page there. But praying for Colt to get better. All right. Thank you for that. Very kind of you, JD. All right. Let's get to let's get some of the questions here. How about this one from RW? Says, is Tia Savea redshirting? That's a good question because we haven't seen much out of him, and it hasn't been because of injury or anything like that. Honestly, the other guys, Bill Norton and Lole, have actually been really good. So you haven't had to split the D tackle reps as much as we had thought, and money balling as much as we thought, because Collins has been great, Vernon Broughton has been good, Lole, Bill Norton, all those guys playing at a really high level. Is it just not enough reps available for him?
It's a fair question. I've been wondering the same thing. I've not heard anything specifically on Savea. I've also wondered the same thing because, again, he's a guy you haven't seen since about week 2, week 3 on the field for the Longhorns. And coming in, you watch that Oklahoma-Arizona game, that bowl game last year, and you see Savea be a big part of that Arizona defense, which leads you to think, hey, this guy's going to be a big-time contributor for the Longhorns. However, and again, we've seen Vernon Broughton be, all-conference level. We've seen Alfred Collins play his best football over the last 3 weeks. Is that enough to take them off the field to get them on right now? Again, it's kind of that same conversation that Texas had a year ago with its wide receivers. You got talented guys waiting their turn, but when you got Ferraris and Lamborghinis with Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell and Jordan Whittington, how do you get them off the field? How do you make that substitution when you know that the fate of the game or whatever's at stake relies on their play? So it's kind of where I'm at. I do have kind of the thought and I am kind of leaning towards a redshirt for Savea just because you just haven't seen him. But again, maybe it's one of those plans where Texas knows that you're going to need interior defensive lineman depth for games 12, 13, 14. I don't know right now. So it's a fair question. I don't know. And again, maybe it's one of those situations where it was a red shirt going into the season because looking at who you're going to be losing in 2024, looking at 2025 saying, hey, Savea, this is going to be a 2-year deal. Stay here for a little bit. We'll get you, acclimated to the program, get your feet wet. But your real contribution is going to be in 2025 when there is no Vernon Brock, there is no Bill Norton, there is no Alfred Collins. I kind of lean that's more towards the conversation that was had.
I like that theory. That's a good theory. I like that theory. But either way, I think the coaches went in thinking we got to stockpile this room with as many bodies and possible options in case the worst case scenario happens where guys underachieve. And I think the guys they brought in, turns out the guys they brought in addition to the guys they were developing, all ended up playing at a high level. So I also think there's not really a lot of reps out there for Savea right now. They're not going to rotate 7 defensive tackles. No. So could be just that first world problem we're dealing with here. All right, thank you for the question there. Cisco, crying from a yacht, I believe is the expression that Sark likes. We're crying from a yacht. We got to start throwing it out there instead of first world problems. Cisco says, do you sell out for the run and make them beat you throwing the ball? With either quarterback, they're going to be limited throwing the football. If DJ Lagway's got a hamstring injury, that's going to limit his effectiveness as a passer. And Aiden Warner, and we'll talk about this in just a second, we don't really know. Isn't the mystery of Aiden Warner kind of an advantage for Florida? We have no idea. All we have is what we saw versus Georgia from Aiden Warner. And the truth is, Georgia made Quinn Ewers look pedestrian at times. Georgia's defense can do that to you. Is it possible Aiden Warner's going to come out slanging the rock? Do we have to be concerned about stacking the box and playing man-to-man on the outside? And could Aiden Warner or DJ Lagway make you pay for that, basically?
Listen, I think you pick up the same game plan you had against Michigan and Oklahoma, and you put it in this one here. Even with that said, you don't really have to account for a Michael Hawkins or an Alex Orji in this game. And so I'm not planning to play DJ Lagway if I'm Pete Kwiatkowski and Johnny Manson. You have, obviously you go over the personnel with your guys. If you see 2 on the field, that he's a big deep ball guy. He can scramble. He can run. The issue is, will you see him on the field? I believe against Georgia, he was 6 of 19 passing. He wasn't, lighting it up through the air, but they had to throw the football, right? That was a game that they wanted to win. That's a big rivalry game. That game means something to them. Against Texas, I question how often they put the ball on their shoulders. I think you see them kind of come out with the Mississippi State game plan. Listen, run the football, try to get 3 to 4 yards per rush, take every second off the clock, shorten this game as much as possible, and make it look better than what the score might actually indicate at the end of the game. But you don't have much of an option right now at quarterback, and you certainly can't afford to have him go down with injury, Rod. That would be very disastrous if you're Florida.
Oh, yeah, you can't. I'm with you on that, too. I think it's more gamesmanship than anything, the DJ Lagway news, but there's no doubt. I mean, you see Jobert says, what medical staff would clear Lagway to play? Like, that should be looked into.
That's a great question.
I don't, like I said, when I saw them bring the cart out and the whole team come off the sideline to support him and to nurture him, basically, and to console him, I thought, okay, well, whatever it is, it's bad. We ain't going to see him in the Texas game.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what it was the time that I was like, you don't get carted off the field and then have the team come out to console you if it's something you can come right back from. So whatever they're doing there is working. The training staff, they're doing a hell of a job, man. They're working overtime to get him out there. Or he's just a physical freak of nature, and his body is he's like Wolverine. He's healing at a whole different rate than the rest of us. Not sure what's going on there, but either way, Texas at least have to have 2 game plans ready to go. Hey, speaking of Aiden Warner, how about this one? Did you? I'm sure you were there because you obviously have feet on the ground and you're always there for the media availabilities. Taft Daddy, when Taft Daddy said he's got connections up there at Yale, so he can find out some inside information because there's no tape on Aiden Warner. So like, how are you going to get film on these guys? You can prepare for them. They asked Sark, how do you prepare for a quarterback we have no film on. And Sark said, well, we just prepare for the system, right? We don't really prepare for the player. We prepare for the offensive system. Or here's what Taff Daddy had to say. He says, Warner, talking about Aiden Warner, the third string transfer quarterback from Yale, walk-on transfer quarterback from Yale. He said, Warner played at Yale last year. My best friend is a guy by the name of Ryan Lindley. He was one of their best receivers last year at Yale. Ryan wore number 16 for Jackson. That's who they devote their numbers to. He said, just like I do. And Aiden Warner wore number 15 at Yale. So they were locker buddies. I'm going to get the whole scoop from Ryan here come Wednesday or Thursday. He also went on to say he talked to Ryan about Aiden, and he said he could sling it. He said his arm's phenomenal. He's a competitor. He's a really good football player. He's built for that moment. He wants to play big-time football, and that's his opportunity. So it's going to be really cool. So I don't he's saying that, hey, the guy told me to sling it. Now, this is the question I do have, because I was talking to Coach Shipley about this, and the truth is coaches have a lot of connections. So if there is any film out there of Aiden Warner, Texas coaches got to get it. Yes. Can you, if there's no game film on them, can you get practice? Can you get practice film on players?
Listen, after watching the Michigan sign stealing, documentary route, I think you can get anything. Yeah. I think it's a black market of trade secrets going around between coaches at every level. So it's a possibility for sure. But how much do you actually learn from practice film? I think that's a big question. There should be some Yale tape out there. I don't think that's going to be too difficult. But within the system, Rod, how much can you really take away? I know there might be some tendencies there if you're just watching the quarterback specifically, but for the the big picture wise, I don't think you're going to learn a whole lot for what he could be at Florida this weekend.
Yeah, you can try to dive into get meticulous in your your game planning, but you're right, you won't learn much about the practice film, but at least you'll learn what kind of player he is. Right now, you don't really know. Based on what you saw versus Georgia, you have no idea. So I think that is an advantage for Florida.
Sure.
We don't really know much about Aiden Warner. We don't know how that offense is going to look with him in it. We don't know exactly what his playing style is. We don't know how conservative they're going to be. But I agree with you, CJ. I think they want the Mississippi State game plan. They want to chew up the clock, try to get 3 yards in a cloud of dust, keep that Texas offense off the field. And I think they'll try to run the football. And by the way, that's the only thing you can do versus the Texas defense. What is we're 3/4 into the season, right? 75% of the season is done. Basically, what's the weakness of the Texas defense? Like, what is it? What is it?
I was trying to say it earlier, Rod.
What is it? It's got to be something.
There's got to
no
be
weakness at all.
It's nothing glaring. Listen, Texas is the only defense in the country, and I hope I got these stats right. They're allowing less than 14 points per game, less than 15 points per game.
Yes,
and they're allowing
11. It's like 11 or something.
It's 11. The criteria is under 4 yards per play and under 20 points per game allowed. They're the only team in the country. They're the only team in the country, Rod, that's allowing under 4 yards per play regardless. I put the tweet up earlier today. They allow 3.69 yards per snap defensively. The next lowest, is Indiana at 4.43.
Wow.
That's almost a whole,
man.
Yeah. That's nuts. So I don't know. You see a lot of ones right there. Maybe it is fourth down conversions. You see it at 46, but listen, you're the best in opponent's red zone scoring. You're the best in points per game, yards per play, points per play, yards per game, yards per play, everything, dude. Everything right now
it's unbelievable.
Points to being the best in the country. It's rather remarkable.
It really is extraordinary. And rush defense is one of the only categories where they're not inside the top 5. I guess you go, rush defense. There you go. So maybe rush defense if you want, and that's what Florida can present. We just talked about they have a really talented backfield. So if you want to look at it, maybe rush defense. And so they're still elite actually. They're just they're not impenetrable.
That's it.
Looking at their rush defense, but. Man, I'm with you. It really is remarkable. I don't think they have a weakness either. At least the one that has not yet been revealed. We shall see.
It's not a weakness that's going to cost you games. If you're a 40th ranked defense in the country, you're not losing many games with that offense that you're expecting. Even with the way the offense is playing right now, that's not going to beat you. That's not going to be the reason why Texas loses. you're going to have a disastrously bad run game defensively for Texas to lose a football game, especially with the way those edge rushers are creating pressure. Linebackers are mopping up, rolling out quarterbacks, and the secondary is playing very tight, sound defense. Texas isn't going to lose many football games with that rush defense being the big weakness.
Yeah. No, we're doing that. It's hard to march down the field on them, too. That's another thing, because they don't give up explosive play. They're the best essentially explosive play defense in terms of explosive plays allowed in the country. They've allowed only, and I went through this too, they've allowed basically 13 20-plus yard plays all year. 1 20-plus yard rush. And they've allowed 12 20-plus yard passes on the season.
That's remarkable.
So it takes you forever to march down the field because you got to do it in double-digit play drives without screwing it up, because they're not giving you the chunk yardage play to turn into a single-digit play drive, a 5 or 6 play drive. You don't get that with Texas unless the offense gives them a short field, which has happened. If you look at explosive play margin, which the late great Bill Walsh always said, if you win the explosive play margin by 1 play, you win the game 60% of the time. You win it by 2 plays, you win the game 80% of the time. Texas explosive play margin right now, they're plus 44. They're the best in the country. And the explosive plays allowed and explosive plays generated. It really is. It's remarkable. When we start at the end of it, we're not going to do it now, but at the end of the season, when we start talking about this Texas defense, wherever Texas finishes, winning a national title, runner up, whatever it is, I can't wait till we actually have to break down the numbers, CJ, and then rank this Texas defense all time among the greatest Texas defenses in the history of the program. Because right now they're trending toward being a top 3 all-time defense here at Texas. Hell, it may be number 1 when it's all said and done. I actually don't know, but 11 giving up less than 12 points per game.
Rob, does it feel like it's the best defense in the country to you? Does it feel like there's enough splash plays or quote dominant plays, or is it just sound football that gets the offenses off the field?
They've had the splash plays though. Against Georgia, you're at the picks and your interceptions. I'm with you. I think it's just surreal for us because it's happened so quickly. Yeah. And the strength of this defense is a secondary. And last year, that was the biggest weakness of the defense, was the secondary. And the turnaround, it's been so drastic. So I'm with you. It doesn't really feel like it, but I think that's just more on us. Yeah. Kind of we're too close to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that might be it too. Again, Texas hasn't played many good quarterbacks. They haven't played many quarterbacks that are still playing quarterback, if you get my drift, right? A lot of these guys have been benched. So that's been fortunate there as well. But that's true. Again, and this is going back to the strength of schedule conversation with Texas, the strength of schedule conversation with Indiana. We can dive into the college football playoff picture as well, Rod. But when you play bad teams and you make bad teams or bad players look like bad teams and bad players, you're doing your job.
Yeah, you are.
And that's where I'm sitting with Texas and Indiana holistically with their strength of schedule and defensively specifically is if you're playing bad quarterbacks, they should not be scoring points. And for the most part, those teams aren't scoring points.
No, you're right about that. Yeah. And that Carson Beck game, that was my one point that I would like to make when people was like, oh, Texas hadn't played anybody, which I agree. They hadn't played many elite prolific offenses, and I was going to throw out Carson Beck as a guy getting drafted in the first round, high level quarterback who Texas pretty much neutralized. Not only neutralized, he had one of his worst games as a starter. But now that wasn't just Texas defense. He's playing bad, period. Yeah, that wasn't just Texas defense. So I will admit, yes, Texas defense, in my opinion, is the best defense in the country. But I will also admit that they have not been truly tested. Right. And so they've had the luck of the draw in that regard. There's no doubt about that, too. Okay, let's thank our friend, the Carrot Concierge, before we move on. Another one of our sponsors for our Wednesday live stream. If you're looking for the right gift for the woman in your life, make sure you check out the carrotconcierge.com. Jody Reynolds is a personal jeweler, and she is the Carrot Concierge, folks. So guys out there, we know you like to procrastinate because I'm a guy and guys procrastinate. I've done it too, but you got the holiday season right around the corner. You got plenty of time, all right, to figure out the perfect gift for the holiday season. And my friend Jody can help you do that. TheCarrotConcierge.com. So go check it out. Offices right there in Westlake. Jody focuses on helping men purchase the special gift for that very special person in your life. You can use the QR code. You see it right there on the screen. To see even more, visit her on Instagram or her website, thecarrotconcierge.com as well. Jody prides herself in providing personal service. She takes the extra steps to make sure your lady gets exactly what she wants. And because she doesn't have the overhead of a storefront, she often can get the highest quality inventory at the lowest possible prices, as much as 30% less than what you'd see at a jewelry store. So if you are looking for the perfect gift for someone special in your life, for their birthday or anniversary, or for Christmas, the gift-giving season right around the corner, Jody has a variety of tennis bracelets, rings, necklaces, and more, all beautiful jewelry, all personalized for you and yours. Check out thecarrotconcierge.com. Visit her website or give her a call or give her a text. Take care of that very special person in your life. Thank you very much to Jody, thecarrotconcierge.com. All right, let's get back to the questions here. This one comes from Ryan. It says, CJ and Rod, you got Bama or LSU? Said, I got LSU at home. Oh, man, LSU can't close for some reason. I don't know what's going on. Even Brian Kelly has admitted they're having trouble closing. And, man, Bama, I don't know who's got the quarterback edge here. Nussmeier's playing really well. Prior to that game versus the Aggies.
Yeah.
Jalen Milroe, I like his ability to just be a dynamic playmaker to make something out of nothing. I think I'm leaning Bama here, CJ. Where are you leaning?
I think it's a bad matchup for Alabama. You look at where Alabama's been hurt this year. It's been in the passing game, specifically deep against that secondary. Yep. What does LSU like to do? Like to huck it deep. Now, can you protect Garrett Nussmeier? I think so. Emory Jones, Will Campbell, two of the better tackles in the entire country. Before that A&M game, I was looking at Garrett Nussmeier as the best quarterback in the conference.
Yeah.
And he still might be. I'll go to bat for that. The way that he's been slinging the rock this year, LSU's playing above average, above expectations this year. Going to LSU is going to be tough. Going to Death Valley, that game's going to mean something. Should be under the lights, right? I like LSU in that game. I just don't know if you're going to see that offensive consistency from a DeBoer offense again. And that's even with LSU missing some key pieces. So I'll lean LSU. I think Death Valley gets the job done more than anything.
All right. All right. There you go. Thank you for the question there, Ryan. We appreciate it. How about this one from MJF? Says, has Sark been asked recently about the reason behind Gibson's lack of playing time? Is it telling that Gibson doesn't ever seem to get a call out from coach in his media availability interviews? What are your thoughts, CJ? I mean, yeah, we saw him a little bit earlier, but it definitely seems that more deeper we get into SEC play, the less we've seen from Jared Gibson. And we actually have seen the pony package. There's been some sprinkling in of the pony package, some two-back sets. They even had a 31 personnel actually package a couple of games ago. Why no Jared Gibson?
This is interesting. It's always interesting when you got a young, talented ball player that's trying to get on the field, and there's some guys above him that might be doing their job, might not be. But the conversation always arises to this: if you're a freshman, Rod, what do you do that no one else on this roster does? For Jarrett Gibson, I think we all kind of expected, hey, he's that short yardage kind of pack a punch running back. Well, Texas hasn't gone 6 offensive linemen. Texas hasn't had a wildcat look. Texas hasn't gotten into that full house jumbo set to run short yardage situations, right? They've had more success running the ball out of 11 and 12 personnel in short yardages this year than they ever have under Steve Sarkisian.
Yep.
So what's the point of taking off a Trey Wisner or Jaden Blue when you know that they can provide more out of the passing game, and it kind of tips your hand with Gibson on the field? That's my thoughts as well. I look at it in this way. Texas tries to do everything they can, Sarkisianly specifically, to not tip anything, right? Tendencies, it's all about kind of showing up in the same personnel, but using something different. For Texas, we see 6 to 7 targets a game going to Blue and Wisner alone. I believe Jarrett Gibson only has 1 target this whole season. So it tells me there, right? None of the 3 separate themselves enough in pass protection to earn snaps. I think that's fair to say. Otherwise, you'd see them in obvious passing situations. What you do see is a running ability from the two of Jarrett Gibson or of Trey Wisner and Jaden Blue that's comparable enough, or at least a step above that of Jarrett Gibson, where he doesn't get touches right now. He doesn't right now warrant those snaps by the on-field play, and that's where you saw him early on the field, where it was, hey, you don't have a healthy Trey Wisner. You don't have a Jaden Blue. You got to find snaps somewhere else. That's why you're seeing Ryan Niblett every now and then in those pony packages, because you know he can catch out of the backfield. He's got speed, and it's something that defenses have to adjust for when they go into that, 2 and 3 back looks. So I just think there's more that's provided by other running backs at the moment. But listen, I wouldn't hate seeing them. With all that said, I wouldn't hate it.
Yeah, because honestly, Jaden Blue's getting fewer rushes and more targets in his touches. It seems like now, just off the kind of the eyeball test. Yep. And it seems like Wisner is becoming more of the guy, even though he does get a lot of checkdowns too. His touches are coming, his rush attempts are going up. Jaden Blue's rush attempts seem to be either going down or at least plateauing. It would, I don't know, I think you may need another back that can run downhill a little bit, but maybe that's just not the identity of this run game.
I agree.
And Texas run game right now, it's just an average run game. I'm not trying to talk bad about the Texas run game, but it's everything about it is average.
It's been average the entire year except for that Oklahoma game.
Pretty much, yeah. You're right about that. Yeah, it's right. You're right about, and I think in Oklahoma they found the right run concept before Oklahoma was able to adjust to it. And it was that split flow outside zone, and then Oklahoma adjusted to it, and then they never were able to pop those runs again either. So it's an average run game, and that's the question versus Florida. Do we see Texas' average run game become above average? Because at this point, I think they're going to need that to really kind of mitigate some of the issues on offense. All right, thank you for the question there, MJF. We appreciate it. Jose, what's up, Jose? He says, CJ and Rod, if Blue, continue our backfield discussion, if Blue has been in the doghouse recently due to the fumbles, how does a players usually work their way back to form? I think he's out of the doghouse now. I just think while he was in the doghouse, Trey Wisner proved his worth. Yes. And then so now he's got to deal with, now Wisner has a role. See, at first, I think Jaden Blue was the catalyst for everything. Man, at one point, even right after he has the big game, where right before the game, we had the multiple fumbles actually against Mississippi State. Remember, he was like second on the team in targets, and he was like your leading rusher. Yep. He was a catalyst essentially. Then he lost the trust of the coaches with the fumbling, and then I think when he lost that trust, Trey Wisner gained some trust. And I don't see the coaches demote. I don't think they're gonna demote Trey Wisner for what he's done. So I think he still has solidified his role. And now Jaden Blue is the one who really has got to kind of figure out a new role on the team. And I think it's with him as a guy out of the backfield, being a passing threat on some of those targets, on checkdowns and detached screens. And it works. I mean, those are basically running plays, guys. They're just a way to get him the football out on the perimeter on the edge. Most of those passes are behind the line of scrimmage anyway.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm right there with you, Rod. Again, it's one of those things where if you look at the timeline of the running back play this year, 2 fumbles against Mississippi State, you're in the doghouse, and then the very next week you go out there and you see 2 60-yard rushes from Trey Wisner in a season already where you hadn't had any real explosivity out of the Texas run game. So that's how you lose your job. Now you gain your job back by catching every pass, by making guys miss in space. By when you get your opportunities, you make the most of them. Mm-hmm. And again, that's kind of why you haven't seen Jonte Cook a whole lot this year, is when you're on the field and your number's called and you have an opportunity to make a game-changing play, but you don't do it. What's now that trust level? What can you do now to earn that trust back? Well, it starts in practice, but when your number's called, you have to go in there and you have to make a play. And right now, listen, your opportunities are going to be limited regardless. Every position right now at Texas, because of the depth, because of the number of guys that are trying to get on the field, you just got to prove it again.
I think Sark's the saying he uses is don't count your reps, make your reps count. Or don't count your snaps, make your snaps count. And I like that idea. That's exactly what this team is all about too. You better get out there and you gotta prove it in the time, the little time that you get. Let's thank our good friends over at Home Field before we move on here on our live stream and get back to some of the questions. Home Field Apparel, folks, focused on creating officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. Right now, they have a wide range of available colleges, 180 plus colleges, and growing, getting bigger and bigger every day. That network keeps getting bigger. And they right now have a great can't miss kickoff campaign with their football boxes, Coach. Go check it out. Their football boxes contain 3 never before seen items you won't get anywhere else, unavailable anywhere else other than homefieldapparel.com. The Platinum Box VIPs will receive additional exclusive items, including a new hat or ringer for Platinum Box VIPs only. Also, you'll get the Platinum Pass, which guarantees you 20% off and early access to a lot of their brand new releases that, like I said, you won't get anywhere else other than Home Field Apparel. Just go check it out for yourself. Visit homefieldapparel.com. That's homefieldapparel.com. Use the code Texas24. You'll get 15% off. That's 15% off when you use the code Texas24. The convenience of online shopping has never been better thanks to homefieldapparel.com. Check out their vintage designs at homefieldapparel.com and use the code Texas24 and you'll get 15% off. Thank you very much for sponsoring our Wednesday live stream. All right, getting back to a couple of questions here. Rick wants to know, will Arkansas be the team that tests the Texas D? One thing that worries me about Arkansas, I think that Arkansas backfield, I was just talking about the Florida backfield might be the deepest backfield that Texas has played so far this year. If Montrell Johnson plays, Arkansas will be the best backfield they play all year long. You agree with that, TJ?
Yeah, that style of offense too, because both quarterbacks, whether it be Taylor Green, whether it be Malachi Singleton, they can run the football too. So you have the threat of that. I mean, we've seen Jaquindon Jackson and their 255-pound freshman running back. Let's not forget about him. I believe his name is Brandon Russell.
Yeah,
he can go. The thing I'm really encouraged by with this matchup and the way that this schedule kind of favors out for the Longhorns here, if A&M's going to keep trotting out Marcel Reed, Rod, you know you're going to have to defend the QB run. To go on the road on a hostile environment and have to stop the QB run against Arkansas 2 weeks before, that's huge. You can basically pick up and move over that entire game plan and that scheme because you know that's going to be a very similar look to what you're going to see in College Station. And that's very important to me, of course, going on the run and playing what's going to be a really, really high-intensity game when that rivalry comes back November 30th.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Rick. I think it's going to be a hell of a test because you talked about the quarterback technique, but look at the running backs and how productive they are in that running game. Jaquindon Jackson averaging 5.7 yards per carry. He's dealing with an injury the last couple of weeks, but hell, by that Texas, you know he's going. He can go. He's going to go in that Texas game. You know he will. That's right. Personal for him. Braylon Russell, the kid you talked about, the 250-pound freshman, he's averaging over 6 yards per rush. They got another kid, Rashad Dubinion. He's averaging 5.8 yards per rush.
They got a good attack.
Dude, they got another kid, Rodney Hill, who's a transfer, and he's averaging over 5 yards per rush. And played in the Ole Miss game. I mean, they got like 5 guys right now in the backfield that are averaging over 5 yards per rush. They can run the rock. And as you point out, the 2 quarterbacks can run it. So that does concern you a little bit. And Pittman's an O-line guy. So O-line coaches always pretty savvy, putting together some, exotic run game concepts. And they got a couple of guys that can hurt you through the air. Andrew Armstrong, I'm not sure. Yeah, he
might be my favorite wide receiver in the conference, Rod.
He's a bit.
You watch games and you watch Arkansas specifically last week against LSU. You watch him running around with the ball after the catch, and he's wearing number 2. He's got the hair out of the back of the helmet. It looks very similar to that of CeeDee Lamb at Oklahoma.
Ooh.
He can go. He's about 6'3", 6'3 and a half. Bigger body, but really, really good after the catch. That's an NFL ball player, 100%.
Totally agree with you. Yeah. So, like I said, will they present more of a threat to the Texas defense than the Aggies? Because they lost on Le'Veon Moss.
I actually think so, and I say that because what does A&M right now have in the passing game that scares you? Noah Thomas is good. He's a big body. Jody Walker, good player. Barber's good player, but they don't have an Andrew Armstrong. No. And I think that's the different level there. Yep. Also, I think Jaquindon Jackson, Braylon Russell. I mean, what A&M's got right now, running back with the loss of Le'Veon Moss, it just doesn't compare to the two of those right now.
Yeah, Arkansas is a more physical run game too. Like it is a physical run game that I think by the fourth quarter can wear you out. Thank God Texas has all the depth we keep talking about. Thank you for the question there, Rick. We really appreciate it. Good stuff there. A couple other questions. I know we're getting close to the end of the live stream, and thank you guys for your participation. MJF wants to know where do you guys rank Quinn among quarterbacks in the SEC as of right now?
Ooh.
That is a good question. Well,
yeah.
All right, CJ, I know you watch a lot of SEC football. You said Garrett Nussmeier, obviously. He's one of your top guys. You had him ahead of him. Is Carson Beck ahead of Quinn Ewers right now?
No, he's not.
This
is tough because who's playing well at quarterback in the conference, right? I mean, there's not many. Taylon Green, he's dinged up. Marcel Reed just came off of a stinker on the road.
Pavia is not.
You see it here. I think you got to go Jackson Dart, Garrett Nussmeier, Diego Pavia, and then who's after that? Jalen Milrose kind of hit a wall. You haven't seen that Alabama output offensively that you would expect. He's still been playing well, so you'd probably go with him fourth. Michael Van Buren's an interesting one because Mississippi State's scoring a lot of points right now. Brady Cook's been down. Nico, I mean, that team, Tennessee, I could call them out for fraud watch. If we could go another hour, Rod, I could go on about them.
Fraud watch.
They're averaging 22 points a game in the SEC play. They haven't scored more than 30 once. So that offense stinks. That quarterback play is a little underwhelming as well. But I don't know. Jackson Arnold, probably not. Marcel Reed, probably not. He's probably fifth or sixth.
I was going to say, he's right there in the middle. He's probably right there, smack dab in the middle with that group.
I like Lenore Sellers. I'll say that. I like Lenore Sellers. I just think he's pretty limited if you have to have him sit back and throw the football 30 times. That's not necessarily their game plan, but if you take away that kind of, read option threat of his.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's playing really good ball right now, though. Texas is probably fortunate they don't have to go play South Carolina this year.
No, it's a good point. And Texas hasn't really had to play many quarterbacks who can run like Sellers. They'll get their dose of those types of quarterbacks, maybe with a Lagway, but he won't be able to run. But Taylon Green down the stretch, Marcel Reed down the stretch will definitely be a couple of tests for that Texas defense. I thank you for the question there, MJF. How about we thank our last sponsor of the evening before we get ready to end our live stream, Andy Ludicky and his team. We really appreciate them sponsoring our Wednesday night live stream. If you're looking to diversify, you may be someone like me that has their hands in multiple businesses. Well, Andy can help you diversify by finding you businesses that will fit your time allotment and your financial goals. If you're stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general, just call Andy. He will take you through a process to help you find businesses that will fit your skill sets and your financial goals. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your financial destiny, what are you waiting for? Call Andy today at 404-973-9901. That's 404-973-9901. Or you can reach out to him at Andy@myperfectfranchise.net. That's Andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Thank you very much to Andy Ludicky and his team for sponsoring our team here at On Texas Football for our Wednesday night live stream. All right, last one here. Sam says, Lady Longhorns volleyball just won 3-1 versus Mississippi State. Madison Skinner, 25 kills. Hook 'em. Damn right, we appreciate that.
Got to get out of a rut. Best way to do that is to rely on your best player. So good win for Texas volleyball. They got to find a way back in the rhythm before conference play and then postseason coming up.
Love that. Thank you for the update there. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for all of your questions and the super chats. Once again, if you have some time, folks, pray for Colt, part of our own Texas football family. Pray for Blake Monroe and his family, and hopefully everything ends up well for him. We appreciate all of your thoughts and prayers there as well. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Andy Ludicky and his team. Thank you very much to homefieldapparel.com as well. We appreciate them, and the carrotconcierge.com. Thanks, CJ. We appreciate all of your hard work and all of your enthusiasm. Thank you to my man Matthew behind the scenes. He is the real MVP. Tomorrow, you have coffee and football all at 8 a.m. And you'll have the winning drive starting up around 3:15 tomorrow. You don't want to miss those shows as well. And anything that breaks, keep it locked into OwenTexasFootball.com. Thank you guys for all your participation. I really appreciate you helping us build this On Texas football community. And until tomorrow, for Matthew, for CJ, for all of our sponsors, until next time, hook 'em home.